So, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today on this webinar. We have a very interesting and story to issue to talk about. I'll be leveraging and having better understanding of this discussion by looking at the personal experiences of our panelists. Quick background. So, I personally grew up having backstage access at Africa's first television station where my dad retired. And from my childhood, I knew the odds were stacked against women in journalism. I saw reporters who smiled on camera, sweat off the stage in their efforts to balance the demands of their job with the pressure of womanhood. Now, fast forward to the present day, and I continue to hear from our Women Forum members about the challenges they face in their careers as journalists and how they are powering on to achieve as much as possible. On March 8th, the ICFJ Pamela Howard Forum on Global Crisis Reporting, we joined the rest of the world in celebrating International Women's Day 2022, which is a global day to recognize the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. The day also marks a call to action for accelerating women's equality. And for this year, the theme is Break the Bias. And today we'll be drawing inspiration and motivation from the real-life experience of some of our forum members. And I'd like to introduce some of them that are already live with us today. And they include Rekia Musa Jingi, who is a journalist with the Cameroon Radio Television. I'll also say hello to Janika Simon, who is a video news editor at the Virgin Island Consortium. How are you doing, Janika? And thanks for being with us today.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Yeah, thank you very much. And I'd also like to introduce Cynthia Tamara, who is a journalist from Zambia. Cynthia, how are you doing? Okay, we'll get back to Cynthia in a while. And last but definitely not the least, we are joined by the Pulitzer Prize-winning Mario.
Hi.
Adula. Okay, yes, Cynthia is with us live and direct. So thank you. So I was introducing Mario, who is now presently a general assignment reporter with the 19th News, which is a U.S. newsroom reporting at the intersection of gender, politics, and policy. So I want to welcome everybody on this panel. I want to be sure we all have, we may be experiencing some technical issues, but we'll still endeavor to power through because we have our member panelists that are joining us from different parts of the world. So we should put these into consideration. So let me welcome Marielle too. Marielle, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Yes, so I'm really happy that everybody can be with us today. And before we go and start talking about the more serious issues, I would like us to start with something that is truly personal and which is also at the heart of the journalism. So I would like to know how you as a journalist, you ventured into the journalism profession and what you love most about the profession as it is being practiced presently. So I want you to share your personal journalism experience with us. So I'd like to start with Janika. Janika, what attracted you to journalism and what do you still like about the profession today?
Thank you so much, Paul. And again, let me just express my thanks to the ICFJ's forum for inviting me to this panel. I'm really humbled and honored to be among these illustrious guests. What attracted me to journalism? I was, previous to this career, working as a communication consultant, marketing and communication. So I was already kind of in the field. And in my country, St. Lucia, we had a very interesting general election campaign in 2016. I paid attention to the news reports coming out of that campaign, and I was really dissatisfied with the quality of reporting and journalism that I saw in the local press. I found that there were some key questions that remained unanswered as the candidates spoke and started, giving their campaign rhetoric, there were certain issues that I thought were not interrogated sufficiently to give the voting populace, real, and this is a word that I like to use a lot, nutritious information to make the best choice that they could. And so shortly after that election, I decided to start freelancing, just showing up to places with my camera, with my phone, asking questions, recording, and then reporting on what was said and what I found out and heard. Strangely enough, people accepted me, just a random person showing up places and asking officials questions. Nobody kicked me out of press conferences and so on. And so I kept doing that until I made a connection with one of our local stations, and I pitched to the managing director that I would host a weekly news magazine. It was that pitch was accepted 6 months later. So I began to host a show called The Journalist. And after that, they asked me to assist them in the newsroom, which is where I first got started in my production of daily news. Shortly after that, their editor went on an extended medical leave, and I was asked to act in her stead. That became a permanent position. And, this is where I am. This is what I'm doing now. So I no longer work in local press. I work for a St. Croix station, but I handle their nightly video newscast. So I edit, I report, obviously. So I write and edit and present that. Why I think that what I like most about it is I'm an information gatherer. This is what I would be doing. Even if I wasn't a journalist, I like knowing things, I like learning things, I like finding out things. So this is a really natural, a natural place for me to be. Because this is just who I am as a person. And so I really enjoy that aspect, just learning about everything that comes across my table on a daily basis, and packaging that and presenting that to my viewers, and hopefully leaving them, a little bit more informed than they were at the beginning of the daily newscast. And I love it. I can't think of anything that I would prefer to be doing right now.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I don't know if Rikati is with us. What is different in your own personal experience with what Janika just described when you ventured into journalism?
Hello, Paul. Yes, I'm back. Well, my religious and cultural background pushed me into journalism. I'm from a predominantly Muslim community, and young girls are given out for marriage as early as 13. So I decided to change the story, and the only way I can change it is using the media. I discussed with my mom, who said, okay, go ahead. But at one point, she was very hesitant. She said, no, as a young Hausa girl, you can't be in front of the camera. People will be seeing you and they'll ask questions. It's haram. Haram in Islam means against Islamic laws. But I said I could give it a try. Okay, I could be a print journalist. She said, okay, why not? So I went into the Cameroon Journalism School, Advanced School of Mass Communication. I wrote a competitive entrance exam into the school. I passed. And I said, wow, so I could equally make it too, like any other girl. Well, the whole goal was to change mindsets, change the narratives. I wanted to be there where other women are. If other girls are doing it, why can't I do it? My religion or culture doesn't stop me from being whoever I want to be. And when I came into the profession, I decided to carve a niche around gender issues, human story, human rights issues. So that's where I decided to practice the journalism profession. But it wasn't easy because I've had situations where men tell me, you can't look at, in your culture, you're not supposed to look at a man into his eyes. And I'm like, okay, this is another punch for me to go into the profession. And what I like most about it, I'm very inquisitive. I question everything. I question what I wear, what I eat, where I go to, my religion. Why should I look this way? Why am I fat and short? Why is this other person fair and this other one is white? This one is dark and everything. So it makes me to question everything. And at the end of the day, be the voice of the voiceless and be the change I want to see in other people. Thank you.
Wow, I really love that response. And one more person that will be that is also joining us. I'm happy she's the picker who is the deputy city editor for the Hindus. And I don't know, the picker, can you turn on your mic so that we can hear you? How are you doing? We can't hear you. I will come back to you. So before I go to Mario, I'd like to ask Cynthia. Cynthia, what is the true status of journalism in your country, and how does it differ from the ideal situation that you as a journalist would desire to have practice within? Cynthia, are you there? I think we are struggling to reach out to Cynthia. Deepika, are you there?
Are you
Okay.
audible now?
Yes. Fine. Yes, we are glad. Yes. So, what's the situation in your country, and how does it differ from the ideal situation that you desire to practice within?
So the challenges to become a journalist in India is not, at least from the situation that I come from, is not as challenging as the previous panelists have mentioned. However, like when we talk about bias, there obviously is some kind of bias that runs through the world, right? There are some commonalities when we talk about bias. So I think the first thing would probably be the kind of assignments that you are given as a female journalist. Breaking into the profession is not difficult, given that India has multiple media companies, we're a democracy, and we have a free media. But generally, what you observe is women are sidelined to something. Say, women are expected to cover, or women are expected to want to cover lifestyle, films, soft reporting, as we know it, or probably beats such as education, women and gender issues, things like those. And when it comes to, say, defense or politics, you will see far fewer women being given those opportunities. That is one. Second would probably be how many women you see at the top in the hierarchy. So I am at present a mid-level managerial position, but if you compare, as you go higher, you see fewer women at the top who are actually calling the shots. So I think that's where the bias plays in, and of course, challenges as a reporter would probably be common across many countries, because it takes a while to be taken seriously as a woman reporter. I've heard comments from male colleagues, not necessarily mine, but from other publications, who probably say things like, "You're a woman, so it's probably easier to get information from a source compared to a man," which I don't understand, because journalism at the end of the day is a skill, reporting is a skill. So, those are the kind of biases at the outset that I would like to mention that I have faced, at least in my 12 years of reporting.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mariel. I have when I was reading more up on you, and regarding the circumstances surrounding how you found out about the Pulitzer Prize. I know it's a story you've said over and over again, and I'm not going to be asking that question from the perspective of where were you, because we all knew you were in class while the award ceremony was happening, maybe 2 floors, even in the same building. But what I would like to know is, why did you think maybe you should, did you ever imagine that even though you were nominated, because I know even if they actually mentioned my name, that I'm nominated, I'm going to declare a public holiday in my entire house, so that we even know whether I'm getting it or not. It will still be a celebration. Why weren't you so enthusiastic about jumping up and down, even though it was just a nomination, before you found out that this was actually your application, that you were actually successful in that nomination?
Yes. That's a good question. I think the excitement hit me later. I was in shock when I found out when I was in the classroom, and the real thing was I didn't even know I was nominated. I wasn't paying attention to the awards at all that year. I was in school, so I was very focused on studies, and I had just come from an internship, so I didn't really think that my name was going to be attached to anything related to the Pulitzer. So I was extra shocked to hear that my name was on the project when it got the award. But I did celebrate with my family after. They were the first people I texted from my classroom.
Okay, for those that did not know the story, so what happened was that the first time, in the first instance, she wasn't aware she was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. The second interesting detail was during the day that the ceremony was happening, I think 2 floors below the venue where she was in class, and 2 floors below where she was having her class was where the ceremony was happening. She was just in class when she was notified that she won a Pulitzer Prize. And for another question I had reading it up about you was that you've been a contributor for the New York Times, and now you are with the 19th News, which focuses on gender policies and politics. So I'd like to know what personal decisions influence, what personal perceptions or perspectives or personal passions influence that decision to move, to make that switch. And as a woman, what kinds of issues are you also always passionate about to report on? Maria.
Yeah, so I was working breaking news at the New York Times for a year, and COVID hit, and it just became very COVID heavy. And I wanted to write stories that were talking about people who were being impacted. And so I wanted to kind of walk away from breaking news a bit. And I heard that the 19th was about to launch. And so it was an unknown news outlet at the time because it hadn't really started yet. And I've always been interested in nonprofit news, and that's kind of starting to become more of a common business practice in the US. And so I just decided to take a leap of faith and join this organization, the 19th. Like you said, it focuses on the intersection between gender, politics, and policy. And I decided to take that leap of faith because I trusted the leadership, and I knew that they were concerned with keeping the standards of quality journalism, but also trying to focus on stories that weren't being told. And it usually ends up being covering issues that affect the marginalized and the underrepresented. So I tend to cover military issues and how gender plays a part in that, aging, misinformation in the US. We're a primarily domestic-based outlet, so we mostly focus on US issues.
Okay. Yeah, Cynthia, are you? I think Cynthia is back with us now. Yeah, Cynthia, I would like to also know the kinds of issues that you are personally passionate about reporting, and yes, and what do you intend to still achieve as a journalist in your country?
Kindly repeat the question. You are cutting.
Okay, so my question is this: what kinds of issues are you personally passionate about, and what kind of impact do you think you as a journalist can make in your country?
Oh, wow. I'm unable to get the question. I don't know, you were cutting.
Cynthia. Okay, so Cynthia, can you hear me?
You are cutting. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Cynthia. Can you hear us?
Okay. Repeat the question again. I'm so sorry.
So my question is this, what issues are you personally passionate about? And what kind of impact do you think women journalists like you are peculiarly positioned to tackle and address in your country?
Okay. Basically, the so
Fortunately, we can't hear Cynthia. We'll get back to Cynthia in a minute. So I'd like to engage our audience a little bit. So we have some questions that I would like you to help us answer. The first question is because this is truly, we have participants from different parts of the world. So I would like to know the status of gender bias in journalism in your country. And do you consider it as a major issue in your country? And do you think this is a major issue? So the question is this, is there gender bias in journalism in your country? So we've had 56%.
in our country. Hello. Hello.
Okay, so I think this is a truly global issue. 85% of our participants said it's a major issue with them, while 15% said it's not an issue in their country. Okay, so this is the result of that poll. Okay, the next question that will be coming on to your screen is this. Considering your own personal experience, have you personally experienced gender bias in your practice as a journalist? Please, I also like our panelists, I would like you to share your personal experience, whether this has been an issue for you. Who would like to go first? Maybe there is a personal experience of gender bias that you would like to report. I know somebody has mentioned the fact that there are some issues that they don't think women journalists can report. So are there also other peculiar examples that we'd like to share? Anybody can take the floor now. Janika, do you want to go?
Well, I was going to say that I think gender bias is a societal issue, and so it's everywhere in every society. So it would be very strange if it didn't show up in this career path as well. I think in my country, we don't necessarily have overt problems in that female journalists are prevented from reporting on certain aspects, because we do have a lot of women in the field. Like a lot of things in my country, in St. Lucia and the Caribbean, women are generally very well represented in professional spheres. So for example, when I was an editor at Choice, the local television station, we did have, I started off with a majority of women in the small newsroom. And then when we lost people and I was in charge of hiring, I happened to hire women. So we had an all-female team of reporters. So there's not, I would say, bias in terms of hiring practices, but where you find the bias is in interacting with people in society. So we have to go out into the field, we have to interview people, we have to seek comments from officials, we have to do all of that. And that is where you would find a difference in the way that male and female journalists are treated. I don't think that any of my male colleagues, for example, have been asked out on a date by your interview subject. That is something that has happened to me personally, as well as several of my female colleagues. You have people, interacting with you in maybe less than respectful ways. So you'll ask a question and somebody will answer you, "Hey, sweetie," or that they're going to address you by those names. And these are things that I think male journalists don't have to deal with. People may want to try to intimidate you physically or otherwise. Some politician, and this happened not to me, but a colleague of mine in a different island, was actually pushed by a minister of government, pushed down to the floor because she was asking questions that he did not appreciate. Now, does it happen to both men and women in journalism? Yes, I do remember an example of a male journalist in the US that was assaulted by an elected official or somebody that was running for office. But the physical differences, between the average man and the average woman makes physical aggression towards women that much more serious. So I think that in every society that is inequitable, you have gender bias that runs through the entire framework of society. And so journalism is definitely not exempt from that. And I think that just the way that people view women will mean that women showing up wherever they may show up are going to have some challenges to deal with.
Yeah, Ricardo, you like to follow up? The mic is off.
Okay, yes, Paul. I have personally experienced a lot of issues around being a female journalist. Like I said in my first intervention, I had a case where a politician openly refused to answer a question because I was a woman. He said, "I don't have the right to look at him into his eyes." And it was very difficult for us to finish with other male colleagues. They started laughing. I'm like, "Oh, wow." And one of them said, "No, you can't. If she can't ask the question, then we are not going to answer." And I'm the only female journalist in my region amongst 15 men for my radio station. So it's an everyday challenge for me in a newsroom. Most of the time, I'm giving very soft stories, as they put it. You can't report sports or politics, and we are more interested in you doing entertainment, women issues, like, "Oh, since you like gender issues, it's Women's Month, you need to do more stories during this period." And when it has to do with sports, if you're opportune, if I can put it that way, opportune to do a sports story or on the field, and other male colleagues are like, "Oh, so you put on trousers. You can equally be in a sport attire. You can equally run to cover some particular stories." In a newsroom, our editor-in-chief tries to bridge a balance. He tries to make sure that everybody's on the same pace, but it's difficult because I'm the only one. You need to prove yourself at every given time that I can do it. I can do that. Times I will say, "Okay, I want to do this particular story." They'll be like, "Oh, you're going into the suburbs. Are you sure you can make it? You're going to travel for 15 hours. They always question the gender, not the person. Like, is she capable of writing that particular story? And in journalism school, we were, I think, 75% women. But when we graduated, recruiting now is always an issue. They'll be like, "Oh, you're going to be pregnant and you have babies. You will need to take off 3 months for maternity leave and it's going to break. So it's difficult for us to recruit you." They'll ask you, "Can you stay for..." I had my first interview, recruitment interview. The interviewer asked if I was going to stay. "Am I married?" I said no. He said, "Okay, do I have intention of getting married anytime soon? And if I can just be for a year, 6 months without getting pregnant, because they have some particular stories they want me to cover and they don't want me to be pregnant during this period." It's been very challenging personally from my cultural background and the environment where I work, though, and my job site, the boss is trying to make sure that women are given managerial posts and they are equally on the field. We had so many women reporting during sports. We just, during the past African Cup of Nations, we had a lot of women. And I think we are changing the narratives already and we are breaking the bias. at Cameroon Radio Television.
Yeah, thank you very much. So at the end of that session, I think surprisingly, about 56% of participants said they've experienced gender bias, while 44% said no. Probably, I don't know, maybe I don't want to, guess about this. So we have a question from a forum member, Carlotta, and which is which one is the best practice, an example, or a brave change making in the newsroom or entrepreneur people and landscape that you considered relevant or real from the point of breaking or at least challenging the bias as in your experience and evaluation globally and in recent or previous times? Maria, do you want to go with that question?
Let me try to reread the question. So is the question basically what is the best practice to break bias in the workplace?
Yes.
Oh.
And maybe there are models anywhere that you think is worthy of emulation.
Sure. Well, I'll just start by saying that I agree with a lot of the things that Janika was saying when she was talking about how there is gender bias everywhere. It just looks very different depending where you are. And so for me, I think that gender bias hasn't been as blatant in the workplace in the US, but it still manifests in different ways in the stories that I'm assigned, in the way editors speak to me, in what they assume I can and can't do, in the way that sources treat me. And then in the backlash to stories. I know women journalists always get more online harassment, for instance, which is something I experienced more at the New York Times, and my male colleagues didn't have to deal with that kind of social media problem. But when it comes to breaking that bias, I think that I have relied very heavily on the women who came before me, and they just kind of keep slowly breaking barriers and proving that they can do it over and over again, and just really changing the culture of newsrooms and showing the benefit that having women leadership could do. So I think it's a slow process, and I like to think of myself as a little piece in that, and just a continued part of a gradual change.
Janika, do you have any insights on this? And Deepika too, I would like your take on this question too. Your mic is off.
First, or should I?
2+ years into a pandemic and we're still having mic muting issues. I think my philosophy is you break biases by showing up. You show up, you do your work, you become kind of an anti-stereotype, if you will, and you force people to re-examine their held beliefs and stereotypes and biases. So for me, I kind of look at it as an internal challenge. When I had the authority to do so, and I was in charge of hiring practices, yes, these were the most qualified people to come across my desk, but they were also women. So I hired several young women into the newsroom, into the news field, and really tried my best to train them as best as I could so that they would be as excellent young reporters as I could make them. And that made, I think, a difference in the public's mind. So it wasn't just women covering entertainment. It wasn't just women covering fashion. I personally made a name for myself as being very aggressive, somebody that would have show no fear when going up against powerful people in society, reporting on things that may be uncomfortable, asking questions that may be uncomfortable. And I think, people very quickly stopped seeing my gender, and really just started seeing my brain and my ability and my competence. So, I think that however you can in your professional environment, you may not have the autonomy to go after your own stories, but try still to struggle, pitch stuff that may not necessarily be something that somebody would assign you from just looking at you. Go after what you want and do not let people pigeonhole you because you're a woman. So if you need to, you cannot just be that person in the newsroom reporting on women's affairs. Otherwise, just like, an actor, you get pigeonholed, you get stereotyped, and you don't get other roles. So I think from a personal perspective, just being the kind of person that is willing to challenge stereotypes and break those barriers in your personal work is very important. Any power that you have in your organization, you use that to strategically advance the objectives of women. So as I said, I ran an all-female newsroom. My camera operators were men, but the reporters were women. That has actually continued after I left. There was another change of team members, and the new hires were also women. So I like to think that everywhere that I go, I just try to expand the boundaries and expand the space for women in journalism, and just me, myself, doing what I can do to create a conducive environment for women to work and thrive in the field and in their careers, I think is important. So everybody that has power needs to be very aware and strategic about how they use and deploy that power to help other women in the profession and in the field.
Yeah, Cynthia, I'd like to bring Cynthia back in if we can this time. So this question is, have you ever confronted a situation where you were not nicely treated by male editors? We've not had Cynthia's experience. So.
Okay, yeah, I was in the previous government where I went to, that was Minister of Home Affairs. Yes, I went to cover an assignment. And when I stood to ask a question, then the minister was like, why are you standing? What do you want to ask? I am tired. I don't want to answer any question, especially from ladies. And then you seem like the way you ladies ask questions, you answer like you ask questions rather like you've been sent. I felt so intimidated. I felt so embarrassed, especially that the whole press conference was live on TV.
Wow. Moment of silence everywhere.
And
Continue, please. Continue, Cynthia. Okay. I don't think there's anything. So the other version, the original version of this question also talks about the racism aspect of gender bias. Mariel, is this something you are, since you're also covering the intersection of gender and political issues, is this something that you are also observing, racism from the perspective of gender bias? Racism is a big problem. Gender issue is another big problem. Do you see any overlap?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that intersection of racism and sexism is kind of what the 19th really wants to focus in on, and focus on the intersection and really look at who is most impacted by policies in the US. And it tends to be that women of color who kind of meet both of those intersections, they're usually most impacted by US policies. And so the 19th really tries to look at why that is and question some of the actions that are taken. And then in terms of the news organization is very aware that diversity is important. And so the 19th as an organization is very cognizant about making sure that we hire a diverse leadership and a diverse newsroom.
Yeah, thank you. So there is this other, I think, very loaded question. You can be reading as long as I read it out. So how far would women journalists go to break gender bias in journalism? Aren't they themselves sometimes complexed by the environment they have lived in? We are talking about education here. Could a journalist who exchanged their status as a journalist for that of a prostitute in the context of an investigation be an example? We ask because we think she might have been pushed into it because of stereotypes. You can interpret that question anyhow, but this is, I think, what I can bring out of it. That is it really possible to completely get rid of, even the most ideal situation, to completely get rid of gender bias, considering there are some investigations, there are some stories that are better done by women and not men. I don't know whether let's take it from that angle, and whatever you can also take from it. Can we actually say that we can get rid of that bias, or we can leverage that bias positively? Let me start with the picker.
That is a very loaded question. I don't know about getting rid of gender bias. I mean, honestly, it's 2022 and we're still talking about it. So I think there's a way. The journey is really, really tough, where we will look at men and women and the other gender as equals. Having said that, I think it's not impossible to achieve gender neutrality, at least in newsrooms, because it's I mean, at the end of the day, we are supposed to be the kind of bridge between society and polity and bureaucracy. And what I see now is, like someone had mentioned in the comment section about how women are sometimes hired just to fill in a quota. uh, Gender neutrality would simply mean that you hire someone for their ability or their talent or their understanding of a particular job and beat. Uh, so why can't a man, for example, who probably enjoys lifestyle reporting, be given that beat instead of being pushed into something like crime? And why can't a woman be covering crime stories if she enjoys it and if she has no qualms about it? So yeah, I think gender neutrality in newsrooms is important. Even, if when you look at our news channels, um, a woman is supposed to look a certain kind to become an anchor. She's supposed to dress up a certain way. Why is that important in journalism? Why can't we just wear normal clothes, not wear makeup, and go on TV? Because at the end of the day, you're reading the news and you're giving news to people. So there are so many subtle ways in which you could sort of make the environment less biased, because when you recognize a woman as a woman first rather than as an individual, you're automatically exercising bias. That's one thing. The second aspect is definitely in several cultures and countries, the environment is made difficult for a woman to work. So, like one of the panelists mentioned, how many women that we studied with in college are at present still pursuing journalism? So many have had to quit, probably after getting married or starting a family or whatever. uh, I feel like, sometimes the profession is made to be difficult, more difficult than it is. So sometimes you're expected to sit back at work when there is actually no work. because of odd hours, and then everyone has this at the back of their heads that I'll be sitting in office till 9 o'clock, and I have a child back home, so I can't rush back, so I need to quit journalism and pick up something a little more, I don't know, like a 9 to 5, which is a little more sane, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I've never done the 9 to 5, so I wouldn't know. But I think, yeah, like we need to consciously start making little changes to make journalism more viable for those who are still interested. If women are quitting the profession on their own because they want to do something, they want to explore corporate communications or public relations or whatever, that's great. But no one should be forced to quit a profession because it's become unviable for them along with their other burdens. And whatever said and done, whatever culture you belong to, even today, much of the family's burden is on a woman. Let's not debate that. It's not even up for debate. So I think recognizing those, even something as simple as a woman going through her monthly periods, why is it such a difficult topic to talk about today? We're in 2022 and we're still hushing. A woman can't go ahead and say she can't do so and so, she can't come to work today because she probably has terrible monthly period cramps. So I think just making the newsroom a little more open to these discussions and having a more understanding team would go a great deal in actually making women stay in journalism, at least those who want to.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'd like to know,
Can I just add something to that? By any chance, do we have some time to add something?
Of course, okay, you can continue. But before you answer, please, you have a question in front of you asking about the crisis designation status of gender bias in journalism in your country. So, Janica, you can make your contribution.
Just something that Deepika had said that sparked a thought in my mind, and that she was describing how sometimes newsrooms are hostile. The work environment and work conditions are hostile towards women in terms of childcare, in terms of we have cramps today, we're unable to work, etc. And it just struck me that this discussion that we're having is a microcosm of something that is a little bit bigger than that, and that is that workplaces in general in this kind of late stage capitalist global society that we have going on are hostile to people in general. So yes, women have specific issues that need to be addressed, but it's a microcosm of how work is structured today. And I think that if we think about it, anybody who has to deal with, childcare, or who has a chronic health condition or something that is flares up every now and then, is disadvantaged. And I think that employers, companies, businesses have to start looking at making sure that their people are happy, stable, and able to work so that they are able to produce. So I just wanted to say that as we speak about gender bias, women's issues, women's problems, that we recognize that it's not something kind of unique and kind of only affecting us, but that if companies on a whole started thinking about becoming more people-centric, becoming more supportive of the people that work for them, then women too would be, that rising tide would lift us up as well. And I think that the pandemic gave us what I think in my society is a missed opportunity to really reevaluate the nature of work, the way that we balance life and work. And of course, for women, that is more acute because we have a lot of the duties of taking care of our families. But I think it's a problem for the entirety of the workforce. So I just wanted to put that perspective in there, and so that men will also understand that having a focus on these kinds of things will help them as well. It's not just, oh, these, women and their issues. it's a problem for everyone, you know.
Yeah, thank you very much. So at the end of the poll, nearly 70% of participants said gender bias in journalism in their country deserves to be described as a crisis, while only 33% said no, it has not reached the crisis status. And I think if you look at the comments and the responses from our panelists, you can see that this is largely influenced by the part of the world where individuals are practicing. So Mario, considering you also cover these kinds of issues, what do you consider to be the best practices that you think media houses can emulate? Beyond, it's really good that we talked about the quota system. What can still be done beyond the quota system to ensure that these biases are being addressed? And while you are applying to answer that question, a question also came in. I think our panelists can still read the question. Have you ever reported to your bosses regarding cases of harassment and unwanted advances from colleagues and sources? Was the case handled well, or was it able to reach a resolution? So Mario, you will answer the specific question that I gave you, then we'll go back to Rekiatu for Beatrice's question.
Yes, your original question was, what are some of the ways in which news organizations should be addressing bias? I think
beyond the quota system. Yeah.
Yes, beyond a quota system. Yes, completely agree. I think just echoing what Deepika and Janika were talking about, I think it all comes back to the question of opportunity and just making sure that there is an equal opportunity for everyone in your organization. And so that looks different, but in our so for instance, treating childcare and healthcare and paternal familial rights as an important issue to discuss is huge, I think, in a newsroom. Like acknowledging that women do have to give birth sometimes, and they need maternity leave, and they need ways to feel like their work environment is supporting them as a person, so that they can work to their best ability. And I think that just providing opportunities is the most important thing that a news organization can do, instead of just thinking about evening the numbers, because in an ideal situation, leveling those opportunities will lead to a more equitable result.
Yeah, I agree with you. So it's not just about the numbers, it's about opportunities, which actually suggests that the current metric of accessing bias would also need to be updated to go beyond how many women journalists do you have in your news houses. So Rekia, so have you ever reported to your boss regarding cases of harassment and unwanted advances from colleagues and sources? Was the case handled well, or was it able to reach a resolution?
I've had a couple of cases. First, when I was my first job, when I just graduated, I was working for an online media, and it was the boss himself, and he determines my pay package. He had to cut down my salary, and when I asked, he said he's been making advances at me and I've been behaving funny, so I need to behave properly like a big girl. If not, I'll lose my job. So 2 days after, I woke up to him again. I said, if you're doing this, I'll report and maybe get other forces, because I can't work for you and you don't pay me normally. So I got to a police officer that I know, and we had to talk. And at the end of the day, the long story, I was sacked because he said, other people will know, I don't want to compromise. He's the one who is paying me. And I do what he says. And when I got this other job, I got harassment from my colleagues, and they'll always say, oh, you look like this. And some want to even touch you. And when I retaliate, it becomes a problem. When I spoke to the boss said, no, you know, you're the only female journalist here. You just need, you are our princess. And, you know, these guys are struggling, or they're kind of protecting you. So just play along. This profession is for the strong, and you're not supposed to be weak. And a couple of times I told him, I don't like what's happening. If you can't solve this, then I'll go to other administrative or local authorities to handle the situation. It wasn't easy, given you're the only female journalist there. You don't know where to run to and who to talk to. Most of the times, you're kind of in a fix. You're lost between the devil and the deep blue sea. You're scared. If you keep pushing and maybe you report, you might lose your job. But at the end of the day, what are my values? What do I hold so dear? And I said, integrity. If you as the boss can't protect me, then what do you expect from my sources? I've had situations where I just completely forget about a particular story I want to investigate, because the person I had to interview, or the expert will give me appointments, maybe during very odd hours, and also they want to treat you to dinner, and they'll want to give you tips. At the end of the day, it's going to influence what I'm going to report. And if it was with male colleagues, it wouldn't have been like that. Solving these issues has always been a problem. At times they say it's the way you dress that's causing these people to maybe make advances at you. And it's because they keep saying you're the only girl. Maybe we should tell hierarchy to send more women here. So we're going to shift our eyes to other women. And culture, they have rights to 4 wives. So I don't have the right to refuse, because in the community where I work, the men have rights to 4 women. So you just need to play along. If not, you might not have the information you want.
Wow.
The answer is play along all the time. But things are changing. If you stand your grounds, now they say, look at you, you've become a man. All of them, they've given me names. Some will call me John, or some will call me, you are now Umaru. They change my name, that you no longer behave like a girl from the Sahel. So at the personal level, I try to always break the barriers.
Yeah, thank you very much. If you also look at the chat box, Cynthia has also shared her personal experience in Zambia, and which highlights the limitations of existing laws in many countries to prosecute and to get conclusions, legal conclusions regarding these issues. So, as a wrap up, I want us to end on a very, very positive note. So I would like to start with Cynthia on the positive prospects. What do you see changing, and where are these positive changes coming from that project hope for women journalists in Zambia?
We're just hoping, since we have a new government, we're hoping that our president will break the barrier and then consider us women journalists, unlike the way it used to happen in the past. That's what we're hoping to see. And I think that's all. That's what we're hoping to see in the new Dawn government.
Janica?
I think that in St. Lucia, female journalists are working well. There are a lot of us in the field and in the region as well. I think where we have opportunities to expand is into senior management, as well as also into the technical fields, because We still have a gender imbalance in terms of the people behind the camera. Our camera operators are usually overwhelmingly male. There are 2 women, I think, in the country that are doing that work right now, and I love them dearly. But I think that for women journalists in St. Lucia and the region, the key is to just keep pressing, keep pushing forward, keep taking up space, and just not accepting, I think, being pigeonholed or being put into the traditional beats or fields. Do the work that you want to do. There is scope and there's opportunity to do that.
Rakia.
Well, I think we need to bring the men on the table because the women keep fighting all the time. Now we need to bring the men to make them understand that there is a possibility to change and there is a possibility for women and men to work together without any issues. It's true, a lot of women are coming together to form coalitions to talk about things that are troubling them in the media landscape. But we are happy that things are changing. We have local and international associations that are struggling to change narratives, and women are taking up managerial posts, and we have a lot of women who are reporting on sports, politics, and other angles which are said to be left only for the men. And empowering ourselves, if we can empower ourselves to report on those things that are so dear to us, and taking up space, bringing our seats to the table. If there is no seat for us on the table, we come with our seat on the table, and also try to push policies that can actually help change the narratives in the media landscape. Thank you.
Yeah, the picker.
I'll keep my point short. One is, as Mariel mentioned, I think some of us have greatly benefited from the women who pushed the barriers before us. I think in the positions that we are in right now, I think we should do the same for the generations to come, because I see fewer younger girls wanting to pursue journalism now. Even in a country like India, where you have all kinds of people, we're a huge country with like the world's second largest population, but we're still finding it hard to find young girls who want to pursue journalism. So I think, as women journalists who are presently in the profession, we need to start making those little changes that will make journalism attractive again to the younger lot, especially girls, and tell them you can have a personal life along with your professional life. Because generally there are also, we also come across comments such as, okay, you don't have a child, which is probably you can manage to be in a position that you're in. I don't think that what your family consists of should matter at all. If and depending on what position you're in, I don't think that should have a say in how well you do in this profession. Second would definitely be family support. Be it, I mean, doesn't matter if you're single, you're married, but as long as your family is supportive of your decision to stick to a profession that is considered difficult, nothing is impossible. Like, most of us have survived probably because we've managed to fight biases, but also be supported equally by at least someone in our families or people who we live with. So I think these two are aspects that I would like to see improve in the coming years.
Yeah, so I would like Maria to help us with suggestions and advice that you have for female journalists in different parts of the world that are passing through and dealing with bias every day. While you form your thoughts, I have a last poll question for participants. Has the fate of women journalists improved in your country? I hope it has improved. Yes, I think. So please answer your question, answer the poll question wholeheartedly. Most of the responses we are getting, okay. I think I will end it right now so I can share the true status with, they're still coming in, And so if any other panelists has the last remarks after Mario, so just indicate and I'll take it. I think I can end the poll now so I can share the results with everybody. So 56% said it has improved, 13% said it has worsened, while 31% said the fate of women journalists has remained unchanged in their country. So Mario, what is your advice? What are your comments as we celebrate International Women's Day? And what do you think, what are your thoughts what are your parting shots for our women journalists in attendance today?
Yeah, well, I just want to start by saying I echo what my fellow panelists have been saying. Taking up space, continuing to ask questions, not letting challenges that you come across stop you from doing your job, and continuing to pursue the stories and the questions that you set out to ask. I don't think that your gender should not feel like a hindrance. And I know that I come from the US, and so it is definitely a different context. But I think I'm getting a lot of hope. I talk to a lot of young journalists who reach out and ask for advice, and it's hopeful to me to hear some of their questions and concerns, because they're not concerned with the same things that people used to be concerned about. And now some of the assumptions have changed. And for instance, I know many young women who are very interested in being sports reporters. And instead of being worried that they'll be able to break into the field, they're worried about just other things about the job, if they know how to do it well, and less about whether they can do it. So I think that it is hopeful for me to talk to young journalists and see how some of the assumptions about what they can and can't do have changed over time. But as advice to current journalists, I would just say to keep working, to keep taking up space and producing great work.
So thank you very much. I really appreciate Mario. Thank you for taking out time to join us on this session, and to all of our forum members. Apart from Mario, something I'd like to point out is all other forum panelists are members of our group, the ICFJ Pamela Howard Global Crisis Reporting Forum. So if you are not a member of that forum, please take out time to join us. We are very active on Facebook, and so I just put I'm trying to put the link up so that everybody can, if you're not a member, just click the link that I put in the chat box, and it will take you straight to our page on Facebook, where you can interact with us. We are actively engaging, we share ideas, we keep in touch with one another, and we are able to also provide you with access to information that can advance your career in whatever state you have, whether it's information about resources or even information about new job opportunities. And we are always here to support you, and we have a wide array of resources that you can access through the International Journalist Network platform, IJNet. So just go to www.ijnet.org. And to also learn more about this forum and about this initiative, in addition to even more resources in your journalism career, please visit ICFJ, the website for the International Center for Journalists, which is www.icfj.org. So on behalf of the entire ICFJ team, I know that the challenges are numerous. The burdens are still great on many journalists, as we've heard in this webinar. But there are still positive prospects. There are reasons to celebrate and to be optimistic about the future. We've had best and worst case scenarios in this panel, and we know that eventually we have journalists that are doing exploits that we are very, very proud of. and especially those that are women, and they will continue to be motivations and inspirations for others that are in difficult situations, so that they can have an idea of how the future can actually be for them. So on behalf of our entire team, I say we wish you International Women's Day. Enjoy yourself. Don't think too much about the problems. Instead, channel your attention to the prospects and the good things that have happened, and have a lovely day. We say thank you very much to our panelists, and we'll see you some other time. Have a lovely day, and bye everyone.